it used to be that liberals and conservatives could talk to each other, and they need to, because conservatism is philosophy based in tradition. Liberalism is philosophy based in a view forward to make the world better. Well, there's nothing wrong with either of those. They're both sound, intellectually honest philosophies, but they have to work together, because when they do, they keep each other in check and they balance each other out. When they don't, then you end up with this intellectual tribalization where each group spirals towards an extreme caricature of itself.
Hooah, dear pirates, welcome aboard the ship of the Stoic Pirate and our quest for the treasure of the good life. My name is Matthias and I'm the host of the podcast, The Stoic Pirate. In episode 127 of The Stoic Pirate, where we navigate the vast seas of philosophy, ethics and life's pressing questions, I'm thrilled and truly honored to host an extraordinary guest, Rabbi Yonason Goldson, known as the Ethics Ninja. Rabbi Goldson hails from the greater St. Louis area in the United States of America and brings a fascinating background as a world-traveling columnist, TEDx presenter, business consultant, and keynote speaker. In this conversation, we dive deep into the zeitgeist of our times, exploring essential questions about happiness, societal challenges, and the importance of personal change in a polarized world. Rabbi Goldson's unique journey from a secular upbringing to becoming a rabbi adds a rich layer to our discussion, promising insights that are not only thought-provoking but deeply transformative. Every minute of this episode is packed with wisdom and perspective that you won't want to miss. So, without further ado, let's dive right into this enriching conversation with Rabbi Yonason Goldson. And after you listen, I would love to hear your thoughts. Visit my website at www.muellermatthias.ch, MUELLERMATHIS.ch, to share your feedback. But now, let's get started. Enjoy the journey with Rabbi Goldson.
So, Rabbi Goldson, on your website, you start with the sentence, and I quote, "What do you get when you blend together the experience of a hitchhiker, a world traveler, a high school teacher, a newspaper columnist, a rabbinic scholar? So, tell me, what do we get?"
I think we get a human being. I think it was the science fiction writer Robert A. Heinlein who said, "Compartmentalization is for ants." We have the capacity. We're designed to be multifaceted creatures. In the same way that you look at a diamond, and the beauty of the diamond doesn't just come out from the luster of the stone, it comes out from the cut. The many different facets. As you spin it, you see different angles, different elements, different combinations of factors. It's always different, it's always new, it's always fresh. And when we live our lives in a way where we expose ourselves to different types of disciplines, different types of cultures, different ways of thinking. It doesn't mean that we have to go into opium dens and frequent the criminal the criminal corners of the world, but just living life in a normal way where we ask questions. I mean, curiosity is a critical component of in my formulation of ethics, but just of being a developed human being. And so I've been fortunate to have had opportunities to explore many different paths in my life. I studied English literature. I hitchhiked across the United States, backpacked across Europe, ended up in Israel, where I connected with my Jewish roots and discovered a whole intellectual, scholarly, and spiritual discipline that I never knew existed. I was able to teach high school students for nearly a quarter century, to work with adults in every aspect of life. And all of these experiences have made me a multifaceted person. But really, this is how we should all be living our lives. If we find that we're focused too narrowly, that's a good indication that we should probably be trying to branch out just to explore different elements of the world that we live in.
So you were fortunate enough to being able to travel and to study and all that. And maybe not everybody is so fortunate, but you said everybody should branch out to discover the different facets, to be curious and so. So how can people become more curious? How can they discover their facets?
Well, certainly through books is the way it's been done traditionally, but today it's so easy. The whole world is a click away. You can go on virtual tours. You can meet. I mean, here we are. We're talking, uh, you know, thousands of miles away from each other, like we're next door or in the same room. And it's a wonderful opportunity. I mean, for all of the problems and difficulties that COVID presented us, the silver lining is it created a whole culture of interaction. I have a whole community of people that I feel very close to, that I've come to know very well in a way that's often deeper than face-to-face interaction. Because when you're face to face, it's easy to be superficial. That proximity creates the illusion of connection, and you don't necessarily have to go deeper. But when it's virtual, the content of our conversation is all that we have. And so there's a certain motivation to find out more about each other, to learn more about each other. And that's how we broaden ourselves. That's how we expose ourselves to new ways of thinking. Podcasts, documentaries. Who is it? Is it David Attenborough? Has revealed the whole natural world to us in a way that is just breathtaking. There's really no excuse to stay in our bubble anymore, except that it's comfortable. And even though all the experts tell us we need to get out of our comfort zone, we don't like to do it because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to ask you. Like, we have all the technology, we can connect all over the world, but do you have the feeling that people use that also, or uh, like sometimes I have the feeling people they're using the social medias, but they're not really connecting with each other.
Yeah, and it's a big problem. Um, and a lot of it depends on which platforms you're using. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, where I find that there are a lot of people who are very thoughtful, very engaged, a lot of interdisciplinary discussion. Um, Facebook, I suppose you can find it too if you make the effort to look for groups to make those connections. But Facebook isn't really designed for it. And then when you get to Twitter, where everything's in sound bites, Instagram, where everything's in pictures, it's very limiting. And it's easy to convince ourselves, oh, look at me, I'm connected with thousands of people. But if I'm only having what my communications professor in college called chip and dip conversation, I'm not really gaining much from it. And I may be fooling myself into thinking that there's a richness of experience that in fact isn't there.
Uh, you grew up in a secular family, as you told me. You became a rabbi. Did that how did that happen?
Well, it's a story that I outlined in my TED talk. Um, the the short form is that in my travels, I recognize, and this is what we've been talking about already, I recognize the value and the importance, and in some sense, the obligation to learn about people and cultures different from my own and from myself. And when I got to Israel, really through a series of unlikely events, I ended up literally wandering into a religious seminary. And when the instructor walked in, I wanted to get up and leave. He was Hasidic. He had a long coat and the white hat and the scraggly beard and the side locks and the thick glasses. And I was expecting he's gonna yell at us with a Yiddish accent and tell us we're all gonna burn in hell. Then he starts to talk, and he's so articulate and so eloquent, and so knowledgeable, and really challenged me simply by being there. The person speaking to me doesn't fit with the person I'm looking at. And it forced me to reevaluate my stereotype. And it forced me to take seriously what he was saying. I thought, no, it was making a lot of sense. It might take me a few weeks to punch holes in his arguments. But he refuted all of my attacks. He answered all my questions. He responded to all my challenges. And eventually, I just didn't have any excuse left not to change the course of my own life, because the presentation that he put before me was so compelling that in good conscience, I just couldn't bring myself to walk away from it.
And so what was the biggest lesson from his lecture that he gave? What was so
the biggest
compelling?
lesson is, I suppose, that we're not here by accident. You know, it's actually getting easier nowadays to be a person of faith, because the more science tries to explain the universe, the more questions it raises. And to be a person of faith, you don't have to be anti-science. You shouldn't be anti-science. You know, science is the study of the mechanisms of creation. And it's fascinating to learn how the world works and to try and understand the design. But for one thing, we all know in any other area of thought that design does not happen by accident. The universe tends towards disorder. That's one of the laws of physics. And how is it that the human body operates like a machine? How is it that there's so many interdependent parts in a multifaceted universe and world? It speaks to the existence of a designer. And then when you actually get to the point where you discover how many things we can't explain, the universe is not just expanding, but accelerating outward. Well, that shouldn't be possible, according to the laws of physics. Right? Life came into existence. That shouldn't be possible, according to the laws of biology. And yet here we are. So the willingness to ask questions and to listen to answers and to evaluate those answers in their own merit, that's part of being an ethical human being. That's part of being a fully functional human being. If I'm in this world, I want to know why. What is my purpose? Because the fulfillment of purpose is the key to happiness. When we feel like our lives mean something, we're connected to something greater than ourselves. I mean, think of it in terms of a business. What does the business produce? What are we contributing to the world? Yes, I want a paycheck. I need a paycheck. Right? Got to earn a living. But I want to do something that is intrinsically meaningful. Think of it in terms of an army. Every soldier has a role to play, has something to contribute. You need foot soldiers. You need cavalry, whether on horses or mechanized. You need a navy. You need an air force. You need artillery. You need people in the front line. You need people behind the lines. And they all have to be working in an organized system, but they also have to know their objective. Why are we here? What are we doing? What's the point of this whole construct? And what's it contributing to the world? And that only happens when we are inquisitive, when we ask questions, and when we're willing to listen to the answers and to think deeply about them, not accept them on face value, but to really understand. Yeah.
So you say, I mean, we all need meaning, And to find meaning, we have to ask questions, and we also have to accept answers. But don't you get the feeling that nowadays there's a lot of people, they might ask questions, but they don't accept the answers, or they just want the answers that they basically they just want the confirmation bias. They live with the confirmation bias. They only want to confirm their own opinion. And I get the feeling today that we live in a more and more intolerant world where certain questions are not should not be asked. It's politically not correct. And don't you think we're going in a direction where a lot of people lose meaning because we don't dare asking questions, because there's only one opinion basically allowed, the political correct opinion?
Yeah, and then this is something we could really talk about for the next hour easily.
Yeah.
It's really a disturbing paradox that on the one hand, our culture is leaning more and more towards tolerance. You have to accept everybody.
Yeah.
You have to accept every different type of lifestyle. I mean, my wife teaches middle school, and she has children, she has students who identify as animals. This one thinks she's a cat, and this one thinks he's a dog, and this one thinks he's a fox, and they're not allowed to tell them that no, you're a human being. Cat is a different type of life. No, you have to let them. You can't invalidate their feelings. More closer to home, it's politics. It used to be that liberals and conservatives could talk to each other, and they need to, because conservatism is philosophy based in tradition. Liberalism is philosophy based in a view forward to make the world better. Well, there's nothing wrong with either of those. They're both sound, intellectually honest philosophies, but they have to work together, because when they do, they keep each other in check and they balance each other out. When they don't, then you end up with this intellectual tribalization where each group spirals towards an extreme caricature of itself. And then, well, you're one of them. You're a political heretic. You're a hater. You're close-minded. I mean, I literally saw a video of these protesters. The person being protested was trying to engage them in conversation. And they turned around, they literally put their hands over their ears and started shouting, "Walk away, walk away, walk away." I mean, this is not the way a society functions. We have to be able to communicate with each other. We have to be willing to accept the possibility that maybe there's another way of looking at things. That maybe somebody else has a legitimate, principled point of view. And maybe once in a while, maybe I might even be wrong. Yes. Wouldn't I rather discover I'm wrong and so I could be right, than continue to be wrong?
Absolutely. And what can we do to change that course? Like, I have the feeling since the fall of the Berlin Wall, we got in this like comfort zone. We thought like it's going to be growth all the time. Like there will be no wars, everything will be good, globalization. And now I think we're in this comfort zone, and where we started being like now we have to sell it on both sides. I get the feeling, and nobody talks with each other anymore, or nobody listens to each other, especially. How can we change that again? This course of action that we have since 30 years now.
I think it can only start on an individual level. Because I can't change you, you can't change me. Yeah. And even together, we can't change millions or billions of people. Yeah. But what I can do is I can work on myself. I believe one of the biggest problems we face culturally is binary thinking. It's either good or it's bad. It's right or it's wrong. And life's not like that. This is why my book and my podcast are both titled Grappling with the Gray, because we have to grapple with our gray matter up here, But we also have to grapple with the gray areas of life. And that's most of the difficult decisions. If it's clearly wrong or clearly right, you don't need ethics in a situation like that. You simply need to do what's right and not do what's wrong. But most of life is complex. We have competing values. We have clashing principles. I mean, the human condition is paradoxical. I'm an individual living as part of a community. I have to focus on short-term objectives in order to reach long-term goals. I'm basically a physical being with a spiritual essence. And even when it comes down to male and female, we have male, each of us has male and female hormones. We have those two components to our life. So even internally, ethnically, most of us are not one pure ethnic makeup, especially in the United States, where that's the design of the country, the great melting pot. And it's a tremendous source of strength. We were talking about the army before. There's actually a story about a person, a Jew, who came to the leader of his generation, and he said, "Rabbi, there's so many different customs and so many different styles of expression. Wouldn't it be better if we were all the same?" And he said to him, "Imagine that you're a soldier in the army and you go to the general and you say, 'General, look at your army. You got people on foot, you've got soldiers on horseback, you've got soldiers on boats, you've got people with cannons and people with guns. I mean, why don't you just organize your army and make everybody the same?' He's going to laugh in your face. Because we need different types of soldiers to meet different responses, to operate on different terrains, to have a multifaceted approach to engaging an enemy. That's how you build a successful enterprise, whatever you're doing. So we have to be willing individually to engage people different from us, who think different, who look different, who have different backgrounds, to learn about them respectfully, to listen to them, and then, and this is where it breaks down, and this has been observed by so many people, that people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. So my college professor called it dialogues of the deaf. I'm saying my monologue. Eventually I have to stop to come up for air. You jump in. You start your monologue. It has nothing to do with what I said. Eventually you pause. I go back and I pick up where I left off. And so it looks like we're having a conversation. We're really just leapfrogging over each other because it looks silly if I'm talking to myself. I need somebody sitting there to talk to. There's no communication. There's no understanding. There's no rapport. I'm just reaffirming my beliefs and you're reaffirming yours. And so the most effective way is let the other person speak first, or give the other person something to bounce off of. But even if I speak first, let the other person speak, and then when the other person's finished speaking, paraphrase. Say back, "Oh, so is this what you're saying?" Because when we feel heard, we're much more willing to listen. And that's how we can start dialogues. And that's how we can start chipping away at this tribalized culture that we're living in.
So how do you do it in your personal life? How do you keep your open mind? How do you approach strangers? How do you keep your mind open and learn new stuff?
Yeah, I mean, again, the internet is a wonderful opportunity. You can join groups, you can reach out to individuals, you connect with people online. But I really make a point. I mean, I host a podcast where I have 3 guests on a panel to discuss an ethical dilemma or situation. And the people I invite back with regularity are the people who offer different ways of looking at things. I don't want 4 people that all think alike.
No.
And I don't want 4 people who are so entrenched in their beliefs that it's like cable news, where, okay, You're on the right. You say your piece. Okay, you're on the left. You say your piece. Now we yell at each other for a few minutes. It's like gladiatorial combat, but
Yeah.
nothing's being accomplished except, visceral entertainment for people who enjoy that type of thing. So reaching out, looking for people who are different. I mean, I have an advantage in the sense that I don't look like a lot of people in the secular world. I mean, people look at me, they figure out pretty fast what I am, but then that gives me the opportunity to dispel their stereotypes.
Yeah.
As I'll say things that they might not expect a rabbi or a rabbinic figure to say, and I'll
Like
have
what?
points of view. Like what?
Like what? Yeah.
Well,
What is something like people are
okay.
surprised to hear from you?
So, for instance, I was a guest on a podcast, and then I was asked, what's the difference between hope and optimism? And I said, well, I'd say it's a difference between Paul McCartney and John Lennon.
So
And
explain.
the host said, what? Well, that's not your classic rabbinic response. Right? So
That's true.
then I can go into John Lennon's most famous song, "Imagine," which is this utopian Pollyanna, completely disconnected from reality. And then I'll shift over to Paul McCartney. My favorite song from him is "Let It Be," which is an expression of acceptance of things that as they are now, while still looking to create a better future. So optimism is often disconnected from reality, whereas hope, the Hebrew word for hope, is kav. It's actually tikva, which is the name of the national anthem.
Okay. Yeah.
Because after nearly 2,000 years of not having a country, the Jewish people got a country back. Right? Yeah. That's unprecedented in world history. So the concept of hope, but the word tikva comes from the word kav, which means a line of direction. That's what hope is. I have a sense of where I'm going. I have a course to chart. We mentioned earlier, happiness comes from purpose and meaning and direction. So being able to draw on my secular background and to play off stereotyping, those are two devices that I like to use to get people to think twice about who and what I am.
And you play with that also a little bit, I think, because you call yourself the ethics ninja, and that's also not something that somebody expects from a rabbi, to call himself a ninja. And so what is an ethics ninja?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've had people comment, do you really want to? Isn't that a contradiction? I mean, the ninja were assassins. All the ninja were not necessarily assassins. They weren't assassins by definition. They were agents, and they were covert. And today, and again, martial arts is all about using the other person's strength against themselves. And so in a world where people are entrenched in their ideologies, where they're absolutely certain, regardless of whether they're right or not, in the way that Socrates used to ask questions that would expose the logical fallacies, rather than saying to somebody, you're wrong, he'd say, well, if you believe that, isn't this the natural consequence? Yeah. Well, then isn't this the next step? Yeah. Well, isn't this the next step? Well, yeah. Well, didn't that just contradict what you said originally? Well, that could be dangerous, right? He was condemned to death for being annoying, which was a capital crime back then.
Back then, yeah.
It was okay, but he was accused of. He was accused of corrupting the youth of Athens. How? By making them think. So this goes back to the ninja question. Right? Yeah, we have to be able to find ways to engage people where they don't realize that we're actually getting them to reconsider, reevaluate their own points of view.
That's brilliant. Yeah. And that's exactly what we need, because if people realize too quick where we're going, they shut down and they don't even want to listen, because that's the problem we talked earlier. And if you are able to make people think themselves and come themselves to the conclusion, is also it has a much bigger effect, because it comes from them. So we need more ninjas in our society, I think, and you are one of them, and you're also a business consultant. You go as the ethics ninja and to corporations, you teach them. So what do you teach corporations?
The simple message is that success depends on culture. Culture depends on trust. And when we trust the people we work for and the people we work with, then we are much more likely to be committed, to be loyal, to be engaged, to apply ourselves. In other words, you look at a sports team. They want to win. They want to win.
It's the whole point.
But they only succeed in winning if every player on the team can trust every other player on the team to do his or her job. Right? I don't want to be the guy who's picking up other people's slack, because, right? And this is true in any kind of teamwork or partnership. This is why we have team building exercises, to learn to trust each other, to learn to be trustworthy. I mean, you talk to Navy SEALs or elite officers in the Army, and what makes it work? I know that the guy next to me is going to be there for me, and he knows I'm going to be there for him. And when you have that, you can be unbeatable, but it only works through trust. And the only way to earn trust is to be trustworthy. And the way to be trustworthy is to live according to the principles of ethics. And it's especially important with bosses and managers, because culture is top down. Nobody in the bottom is going to say, well, the boss is corrupt, the managers are impossible, but all us folks down here, let's take the high road and show them the real way to do things. It's just not going to happen. Why should it?
So what is the biggest mistake that leaders or bosses do? Because I just read the Gallup poll that every year comes out, where they ask all the people if they're happy at work and so on, and it's shocking, because there's about 20% who are really engaged at work, and all the others, they go by basically for getting paid, or they're completely disengaged. And the problem is always, it's normally the leader. People don't. There's the saying that people don't quit companies; they quit leaders, their bosses. So what do bosses do wrong? What's the main mistake they make?
Well, I like to say that the main mistake they make is to believe they have to choose between being good and being successful. As I don't believe anybody wakes up in the morning and says, what can I do today that's going to be evil? How can I make my employees miserable? How can I sabotage my own success? I mean, it's just not the way people think.
No.
So why are so many businesses in crisis? Because the leaders tell themselves, well, I need to do this to get ahead, to be competitive. When you look at the businesses that have a reputation for tremendous success, and I point to some of the businesses here in America, there's one that I never even interacted with. I've just heard so many stories about them. Zappos Shoes. It's an online shoe company, and you just go online and read about their culture. It's unbelievable. They encourage their salespeople to spend as much time on the phone with customers as the customer wants. And I think the record is something like 56 minutes. They might even be higher than that. But it's all about relationships. I call in to buy shoes, And I'm talking, and the person on the phone is polite. It's first of all, I get a human being.
Yeah.
That already is rare enough. But then
Yeah.
it's asking me how I'm doing, what's new. I start schmoozing. I start telling about my day. Maybe it was good, maybe it was bad. I'm making a friend.
Yeah.
And he's not worried about some supervisor who's timing every call, telling him, you've got to get off the phone in 3.5 minutes because that's the optimum time it takes. I mean, people leaving their jobs to go deliver shoes because some guy says, I'd really like to buy it, but I can't get to pick it up. And, well, let me bring it to you.
Yeah.
It's wild. We have a market chain called Trader Joe's. Everybody loves to shop there because you walk in and everybody's happy.
Yeah. And it's so simple.
You've got retired people who go to work there. They don't even need the money.
And it's so simple. And everybody loves it. If there's somebody who smiles, if there's somebody who's happy. I was just in Germany and I was in Frankfurt, and I couldn't believe I went to a Starbucks and I forgot my wallet at the hotel. And my girl who came with me, my daughter, she still had a 50 euro bill. So that's all we had. And so we go to Starbucks. I ordered some like for 10, 11 bucks. And the person who works there tells me, well, I'm not going to serve you because I don't want to give you change. And I'm like, really? And she said, no, I had enough. I had already too many people who came with 50 euro bills today, so I don't want to give you. And I'm like, so you don't serve me? No, you can't go. You can go somewhere else. It's like, and it's so simple. If you're nice to somebody, it just works. It creates success. And in this regard, how important is kindness? Like in this environment?
And again, it's so easy. And it's also, when it comes back to trust, it was bought. What this person, well, I don't know about your case, but sometimes you have a case where a person behind the counter said, I'd really like to help you, but I'll get in trouble if I do. I mean, now you're teaching people they can't be kind, they can't be helpful. I was standing in line to buy a cup of tea, and the person in front of me had all kinds of issues, and it took a very long time. And I finally got to the front. I got my tea, and the person behind the counter said, "I'm sorry for the wait. This one's on us." I didn't need to save $3,
No.
but it's the gesture.
Yeah.
It's we care about you. You shouldn't have had to wait that long. That's on us, even though it wasn't their fault either.
Yeah.
It's just a way of showing people that they matter, that they're important, that you care about, you appreciate their business. And as bosses, to let your people know you've got some leeway. We're going to trust you to not take advantage of the system. We're going to give you the flexibility. If you see there's a reason to make an accommodation, because my wife and I went into, we were in Costco, big box place. And we're walking through the aisles. My wife sees this cooking set. Well, she's had the same cookware since we got married. And it's devolved into bits and pieces and mismatched sets. And she says, wow, this is really nice. And she looks at the price and goes, whoa, this is incredibly cheap. I think it was $80 for a multi-piece set, good quality. And so I did something I don't always do, but I was a good husband. And I said, hey, I'll just get it. When we got to ring it up, came up $200. Not unreasonable for what it was, but it wasn't what was posted. It wasn't what we expected. So, we said, it's posted at 80, not 200. So I said, gosh, that's a big difference. I don't have the authority, but let me get my supervisor or my manager. And he went away, came back a couple of minutes later and said, we'll give it to you at that posted price. Now, they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Right? But it makes us want to go back to Costco.
Absolutely.
We took, my son took his suit to the dry cleaner. And in the pocket, he had a pair of solid gold cufflinks that he had inherited from his great-grandfather, which he had neglected. He just left in the pocket. And when we went to pick them up, they're in a little bag, clipped to the coat. We found these. Now, whoever found them, we never would have known that somebody found them and took them.
Yeah. That's nice.
I've never gone to a different dry cleaner.
No, of course, you go back there. It's like absolutely so. You trust them, and you have
trust.
Yes, yeah.
It works between employers and customers. It works between employers and employees, and it works in society. It works in your family.
Yeah.
It works between colleagues. It works everywhere.
Yeah. So we should do some small acts of kindness. We should be trustworthy, and that gets us all together, and we can succeed much better. And we will have success. And I like what you said about the bosses sometimes think they have to choose between good and being successful. And I think also, and I mean, it's even scientifically proven that good people are if you do good, you're happier in life. If you do kind stuff, you help people, you're happier, and happier people are more successful people. It's this way around. And often in our society, we think when you have success, you will be happy, but actually it goes the other way around. If you're the happier you are, the more successful you are.
Exactly. And then the more successful you are, the more happier you are.
So
everybody, it's a virtuous circle. Everybody should follow Simon Sinek, because he talks about a lot of this stuff. But he tells a couple of stories that I just love. And one is, to this point, he walked into a Starbucks. You were mentioning your experience there.
Yeah.
And so the guy behind the counter, he's a personality guy. He's chatting, he's smiling, he's making jokes. Everybody's having a great time with this guy behind the counter.
Yeah.
So Simon Sinek says, "You like your job?" He says, "I love my job." He says, "What do you love about it?" He says, "My bosses come in. They ask me how I'm doing. They ask me if I need anything, what they can do to help me to make my job easier. I love working here."
Yeah.
He says, "In the afternoons, I have a shift in a different Starbucks. There, I don't say a word."
Yeah.
Because every time my bosses notice me, they criticize.
Yeah.
So I just keep my head down, do my job, don't do anything to bring attention to myself. This is same store, same product, same employee, completely different customer experience.
Yeah. It's extreme. Yeah.
Because
it's amazing.
Because in one place, his bosses have showed him, you can trust us. And in the other place, they've shown him, you can't.
Yeah.
And that changes everything.
Yeah. And it's just a small thing, actually, and it changes everything. You are a very outgoing person. You're extrovert. You talk. You give TED talks, keynotes. You wrote 7 books, I think, or 8 books already.
7th one is coming out this month. Yeah.
So so we could. So you are an outgoing person. I said before, you're not just your ordinary rabbi. You're also the ethics ninja. But people who stand out, they also have people. Often they face criticism. They have haters. Do you have enviers and haters, and if so, how do you deal with it?
Now, first of all, I have to correct you. I'm not an extrovert at all.
No.
And what's really interesting is that many professional speakers are introverts.
I know. Yeah, that's true.
There's actually, I've said that there's no safer place for an introvert than on the stage in front of 1,000 people, because then I'm controlling the engagement. Nothing unexpected is likely to happen.
That's true.
When it's one-on-one, that's great. Put me in a cocktail party and I'll just disappear into the corner and just. But I do love learning about people. I do love human interaction. I love when you can have these kinds of conversations. And of course, like anybody, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. When I taught high school, which I did for 23 years, there were plenty of parents who wanted to have me fired. Because I ran a disciplined classroom. And when I interviewed for the job, the board asked me in the interview, what do you see as your greatest asset as a teacher? I said, discipline and classroom management. And their faces lit up. I mean, smiles around the entire room, because the school was in a state of crisis. It was absolutely falling apart because there were no disciplinarians in the school. Well, 3 months later, several of them wanted me to fire because, well, I didn't mean you should discipline my child. Discipline all the other
Of course.
I'm also very principled in my beliefs. And while I am willing to listen to anybody and engage anybody, I'm not willing to say, well, okay, that's good. You can believe that if you want to. I'll say, well, I'll be Socratic about it. Well, wait a minute. What doesn't that imply this, and doesn't that imply that? And isn't that a contradiction? Is that something you really want to believe? Well, that made some people uncomfortable because I was getting them to reconsider values they may have picked up from their parents. A lot of people just look at me and be turned off. I gave a speech once, and there's a guy sitting right in front of me, front row, right in front of me, the entire speech, his arms crossed. I mean, literally like that. 45 minutes.
And did he say why, or?
No, he didn't say anything. And the moment the presentation was over, I would stay for another 45 minutes of question and answer. He was gone like that the moment, clearly I was not what he was expecting. And he made up his mind, and nothing was going, everybody's laughing at my jokes and my stories, and he's stone-faced. making it clear. But on the other hand, when I finished giving my TED talk, a woman came up to me and she said, when you got up on that stage, I knew exactly what kind of person you were, and I knew exactly what kind of talk you were going to give. And you just blew away my expectations. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to know who you really are. And that's worth everything.
That's cool. But how do you deal with criticism? Or like
most people, poorly.
Okay.
What you really have to do is you have to evaluate the criticism. I often tell this story. When I was in college, my college roommate was washing dishes, and I was waiting for him to finish because I wanted to use the kitchen. So as he's finishing up, and he sort of lingered in the kitchen, I came and said, "Are you done here?" He says, "What's that supposed to mean?" Just ask you a question. What's the problem? He says, "Well, maybe if every word out of your mouth wasn't so sarcastic or martyr, I wouldn't have reacted that way." Well, this is generally not the way you should rebuke somebody. But, I realized he was right. I was a very sarcastic person. And, it's part of Jewish culture. When people have been trying to wipe you out of existence for 3,000 years, you develop a dark sense of humor. It comes out as sarcasm. But it's corrosive, it's caustic, and it's toxic, and it's not something that any of us should aspire to. I think sarcastic humor, it's great for the late night talk show hosts, but it's all at somebody else's expense. And and I took to heart what he said, and it's something that I've been working on for the last 40 years to be less sarcastic. So when the criticism is well placed, all the more so when it's delivered properly and clearly well intentioned. I have to criticize people too. But we all have such fragile egos these days. You have to approach people and you say, "Yeah, that was really nice. Would you mind if I made an observation that might help you?" There are ways to say it that make it go down easier. And sometimes it's nice when other people come to your defense. I was giving a webinar, I call it the four muses of ethical decision making, and it uses biblical stories, the story of Adam and Eve and Abraham and David and Goliath and Noah and the Ark, to teach lessons in ethical decision making. And so I'm not teaching religion, I'm not teaching Bible, I'm using familiar stories as illustrations. And there were 3,500 people in this webinar. And afterwards, I got to look at the chat. And I'm scrolling through it, and it's very complimentary, which always makes you feel good. But then about a third of the way in, I see one that says, is anybody bothered by how many times God is being mentioned in this presentation?
Oh, okay.
And just everyone jumped all over this person. He's not talking about God. He's telling stories. He's using he's teaching us lessons. What are you worried about? So, okay, if I lose one person in 3,500, I can live with that. But it was nice because I didn't have to defend myself.
No.
And that's something that really, you asked, what can we do to change the culture?
Yeah.
Is step in when someone else is being unfairly attacked.
It takes courage.
It does take courage, but it will always be appreciated. And there's something called intellectual integrity. This goes back a ways, but we had a former vice president and presidential candidate by the name of Al Gore, who was misquoted as saying that he invented the internet.
Yeah, I remember that. Yes.
Right. I went back and I found the actual quote. I don't remember what it was, but he did not say that. He said something that was twisted into that. And that just went viral, though the term wasn't around at the time. Right? Everybody's, Al Gore thinks he invented the internet. No, he didn't. Now, I was not a fan of Al Gore, but I'm not going to jump on, I can find my own reasons why I don't support somebody without making them up.
Yeah.
And certainly today, when we keep getting these choices for our political leaders where we have to choose between horrific and just awful, even then, I'm misrepresenting people just because I don't agree with them or don't like them. Maybe they really are reprehensible. That still doesn't give me license to misrepresent them and make them sound worse than they are.
To make them sound worse than they are. I also get the feeling that we're especially looking at the faults or in the other person or in the political opponent, and we point out their failures and their weaknesses and everything. And actually, you wrote an article in the Fast Company magazine where you talk about resisting the temptation, resisting to or stopping looking for faults in other people, and explain that from your point of view.
Well, very simply, it's that they did a study. I may have mentioned it in the paper, in the article. A professor, I think, gave students a sheet of paper, white sheet of paper with a black dot on it. But what do you see? Well, every answer was some sort of variation on the black dot. He said 99.99% of the paper is white, and you're fixated on the fraction of a percent that's dark. And it's a lesson in human perception. Yeah, it's also part of the way our brains work, is we filter out what's expected to focus on what's unexpected. And what's unexpected is often a flaw. May not be a big flaw, may not be an important flaw, but we all have flaws. Nobody is perfect. And yet what happens is that as soon as somebody looks good, we start to raise the bar. Okay, let's turn up the microscope lens another 10 times and another 10 times. And sooner or later, we're going to find something. Okay? Because, oh my gosh, we just don't want, and especially if it's somebody on the other party.
Yes,
right?
That's true.
There can't be somebody who's a really good candidate on the other party, because if there is, maybe we don't have a good reason not to vote for them.
Right. So what you're saying is like also as a leader or as a human being, we should look out for the not for the faults, but for the positive points in another human being, for their strengths, for what they do well. And I think also as I ask you that, like as also as a leader, you should with your teammates or your subordinates, or you should look out for their strengths instead of looking out for the faults. Is that correct?
Sure. I mean, look first for the good points. Right? Certainly as a leader, in Jim Collins' business classic, Good to Great, he says, the job of a leader is get the right people on the bus and get them in the right seats. You want people doing the jobs they're good at doing. Right? Then you can look at where there's room for improvement and help people develop themselves, broaden their skills, improve things that aren't as good as they could be. But always start with the positive, not so you can ignore the negative, but that you have a context for the negative. You see, okay, this person's 80% good, not bad. 90% good, even better. 95% good. Wow, that's we all have something we can improve, but let's always keep that sense of context. And then for ourselves, the Hebrew word for rebuke shares a root with the word meaning vindicate or validate. Validate, actually, right? Because if I'm rebuking you, if I'm telling you, you know what, this is not quite right, what I should be saying is, I believe in you and your capacity to improve and to grow and to do better and to learn. And I want to help you develop yourself to do even better than what you're doing now. And if rebuke is given that way, together with appreciation for the positive, then there's no reason for us to get defensive. We don't lose trust. We trust more because I don't want somebody, you ever give, you're a kid, did you ever write a paper and give it to your mom to read? Yeah. Moms are great cheerleaders.
That's true.
But just because my mom liked my essay doesn't mean my teacher's going to like it. Just because my mom likes my music or my story or my poetry, she's supposed to. That's part of the job description. But when I go to somebody for advice, well, maybe what I really want is just to be patted on the head and told I'm wonderful. Well, that's not what a friend really is. A friend is somebody who's to say, you've got some potential here. I see something where maybe you could bring out more of that potential. You can make this better. I want to help you make it better.
We talked about a lot of things that could be better in the world, or we could do better, or like where there's weaknesses or in society and so on. If you would find a genie in a bottle, and the genie will give you one wish, and it would say like, look, the wish has to do something with our society or with our world. What would you wish for? What if you would have that one wish?
I think term limits at this point, but I can't even think of what my three wishes would be. So you're trying to pin me down to one. I'll just tell you one thing that comes to mind. I would like to see that I was just thinking a way to phrase this, and it's not quite coming to me. I think what I would like to see. Well, let me give you an example from history. 2,000 years ago, there were two great academies of Jewish study, and one group had a very strict approach to interpretation of the law and personal conduct. and the other had a softer, kinder, gentler approach. And their worldviews, their mindsets influenced the way they interpreted Jewish law. And they fought. There are over 280 recorded disputes between them. And it's brought down in history that when they argued in the study hall, it was as if they fought with swords and spears. But when they left the study hall, they were friends. It was never personal.
No.
It was all about a commitment to get to the truth.
No.
And the softer, gentler group, they were the majority, and so the rulings almost always followed them. And yet when they recorded their rulings, not only did they include the minority opinion, but they always put the minority opinion first.
Okay.
Because only when you understand the other side are you in a position to truly understand your own.
No.
And I suppose what I would really like to see is the ability that we've had at times, but not nearly enough, to separate philosophy from personality. Because when we fuse the two together, as we so often do these days, that's when it turns into ideology. And once it's an ideology, there's just nowhere to go. There's no room for compromise. There's no room for civil discourse. There's no room for working together, because if you don't see things my way, you're evil. And so to relearn how to separate the personal from the philosophical or the political, let's say, and the willingness to engage civilly, thoughtfully, and being guided really ultimately by a desire to uncover what's true, what's good, and what's best for all of us.
Oh. That's beautiful. I hope you find that genie in the bottle, though. I would totally agree. What you said just now, I would totally agree.
I mean, I'd also like $1 billion, but
of course, who wouldn't? That's why I said specifically it has to have something to do with societies. No, but maybe you make $1 billion with your new book. You just said you have a new book coming out, and what is it? About what?
So this one's a little bit different. My last couple were focused more on the business world, the professional world. This one is actually an anthology of essays about the Jewish calendar, but it's not meant only for Jews, because my whole approach is to take the universal lessons of Judaism and show their relevance to the wider world. So when I wrote many of these essays, I was not writing for a Jewish audience. I was writing for anybody who wanted to read it. It's a way to learn about our culture more deeply, because Judaism is about more than lox and cream cheese and bagels, and often Jews and Judaism are not represented authentically based on our traditional values in the media. So it's an opportunity to learn about our culture, but it's also an opportunity for the readers to learn about themselves, to see how these principles apply in their own lives, and again, broaden their perspectives to think more deeply and think more meaningfully about why we're in this world. Yeah. And it's called The Spiral of Time.
The Spiral of Time.
Spiral of Time, and then it's due out in August. So
cool. And so the target the target public is the target group is people who are interested in Judaism, or also kind of like for self-improvement, or
the publisher's target audience is the Jewish community. My target audience is anybody who's interested in self-improvement, self-awareness, and deeper understanding of culture and personal philosophy.
Yeah. So everybody who's curious, who has an open mind, who wants to learn something, should buy the Spiral of Time. And you said it comes out end of August, and is it
Yeah, I think August 20th is the
okay?
publishing date. How long it takes to become actually available, but go to my website, ethicsninja.com, and look in books. And as soon as there's a landing page, there's already a description page, but as soon as there's a landing page to buy the book, the link will be there.
Great. And that's the other question I want to ask you. Like, how can people reach you? You just said it, ethicsninja.com.
Yeah,
Are you open for everyone? Like, if somebody has a personal, like an individual who wants to reach out to you, are you
absolutely.
open? Yeah.
My great love is conference keynotes. Um, there's just something magical about speaking to a group and getting them to engage in these types of discussions. But I do training, I do coaching, and I'm always willing for people to reach out. All the contact information is on the website, brand new website too. So have fun investigating, and also on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you look up Yonason Goldson on LinkedIn, you'll find me there, and please reach out.
Yes. And hopefully we can hear you speak once, maybe in Switzerland. Maybe we'll manage to get you over here and as a keynote speaker. We'll see. I'm working on it. And is there anything that we forgot to talk about that you would teach our listeners, or tell them something that we forgot?
There's always, you can always go farther and deeper. My wife and I went to Wyoming this summer. We went to Grand Teton National Park, which is absolutely stunning. It's the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. And we do a lot of the national parks, and I've seen a lot of the world, and it was truly spectacular. And we were hiking along, and there are these three young fellas, and one of them said, "Oh, I'm doing a project. Could I interview you?" I said, "Sure." So we chatted for a bit, and he asked, "What's the one piece of advice that you would like to give?" And I told him something that we've already said today: is connect to something greater than yourself, have a sense of purpose and meaning in life. But afterwards, I thought I would rather have said something different. Surround yourself with people of quality. The business guru Jim Rohn said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. And that applies in person, and it applies in the media, the podcasts you listen to, the news you listen to, the shows you listen to, the things you read, the things you watch. We absorb from those, and they change us. And don't just surround yourself with people who think like you.
Yes, this
Find
diversity
people.
of thoughts. Yes.
Diversity of thought, and it doesn't mean everybody's right. But when you have people, when you can at least understand where people are coming from, then you can have more respect, and you'll be more secure in your own thinking, because you will have made a decision by thinking your way through the issues, so that I'm not just saying what I have been conditioned to say. I'm saying what I've really had the opportunity to think through and establish it as a core belief. Be with people that come from a different perspective, as long as they're people with integrity, they're people of character, they're intellectually honest. They have the qualities that we should all want to acquire. Spending time with people of quality will increase our quality, which will help us influence the world in a much better way.
That's a very good one. You said that's your kid asked you this question for basically like when you were on a trip on Wyoming.
This
Is
is
that
young
correct?
people that we
And
happened
that's
across. Yeah.
young people. So
Yeah.
and this is exactly that with young people. I mean, you tell young people, surround yourself with good people. Not say as a parent, you say like, oh, you should have another circle of friends or something. It's very difficult because you have to be careful that you don't that they don't do the opposite of what you want because they want to be there. So how would you say to a parent who thinks like their kid is not in the right circle or should have a better circle? How do you approach that without creating the opposite reaction?
I was an expert on parenting until I had my own kids. And mine are all out of the house now, and I still struggle with this. There are things I would like to say to them that I often don't. You really have to know, and ideally, if they're ready for the information, they'll ask.
Yeah.
Once they ask, then you can. Doesn't mean you get up on the soapbox and start pontificating, but at least when they ask, there's a certain receptivity to what you're going to say. Somebody came up with a model a number of years ago. They coined the expression helicopter parent.
Yeah.
Hover. I think now they're calling them snowplow parents.
Okay, I didn't hear that.
Get all the obstacles out of the way.
Out of the way, yes, yeah.
Right. So that was the one style. The other type was the drill sergeant. Okay, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. Right? Just give them orders, never give them the chance to make their own decisions. But the idea was the consultant.
Yeah.
Right. Well, okay, you want to do that. Well, what about this? What about that? What if this happens? It comes back again. Asking questions is one of the most effective techniques in any form of communication. Have you thought about this? Or another way is, very often young people will turn to advisors other than their parents. And if you know who those are and you have any kind of connection with them, sometimes you can use them to, could you start a conversation about this topic, with my son or my daughter? Sometimes that will work. But if parenting were easy, we'd all be a lot more well-adjusted than we are.
Right. That's true. Just maybe a last thing. You just mentioned that the snowplow parents, like I never heard that expression before, but it makes total sense, like getting all the obstacles out of the way. Do you think that nowadays our society is doing exactly that, snowplowing everything, trying to put every obstacle out of our way of all the young people, and so they stay constantly in their comfort zone, and it's not going to help them, I think. But do you think that is a problem now in our society?
Oh, I don't think there's any question. I mean, you hear these absolutely insane stories about teachers being attacked on every level, even lawsuits against teachers who failed a child. There need to be checks upon. There are incompetent teachers out there, and that's the job of the principal, the administration, to monitor that. But and I experienced it as a teacher myself. Parents would literally attack me because I had standards and I had expectations. And I was, it's been gratifying how many students over the years have come back to me and expressed appreciation. I had when I was in teacher training, I had a mentor who was a master, an absolute master. And one time, another person in the group said, "Wouldn't you have hated to have him as a teacher?" And I said, "Wouldn't you love to have had him as a teacher?" Because those are the teachers we learn from, the ones who expect more from us. And we're not doing children a favor by giving everybody an A. No. We're not doing them a favor by by not enforcing any kind of disciplinary standards. We're not doing them a favor by letting them think they're dogs and cats. And this was once common sense.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that there weren't other problems. There were. There was a rigidity in the classroom, and if you didn't fit the system, it was very difficult for you. And of course, most people don't fit the system completely.
Yeah.
So it's not saying that things are looking at the problems now is not being Pollyanna about the past. And often we're trading one set of problems for another.
Yeah.
But the lack of guidance, the lack of standards, the lack of values, the lack of expectations, I think is really setting young people up for tough times when they get older. My oldest son served in the Israeli Defense Force in their special forces combat unit, and someone wrote a book about how many of the Israeli startups were started by former special forces soldiers, because they learned camouflage, they learned navigation, they learned martial arts, they learned this whole array of skills. And my son never saw combat, for which I was very grateful, but he has all these skills.
Yeah.
And he can do pretty much anything he wants.
Yeah.
Because
I think
those standards and expectations were there.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point you say there, because I think doing the military service forces you to get out of your comfort zone, and you start realizing that you can do much more than you ever thought you would be able. And just to have to sleep in a tent or outside, you don't eat much. You're on long road marches. You carry stuff. It's raining, whatever, and you realize you survive that, and you become a stronger person with this experience. And I think I'm glad that in Switzerland still we have mandatory military service, although you can choose if you're conscious. If you say you cannot do your military service because if you're conscious, you can do civil service. But it's still a good thing that I think that everyone should do this military service, just also for a personal experience. And there's so much you can learn out of it. I think, like solidarity, teamwork, and personal growth. And I think so. And I think our society is getting kind of like weak and fragile and oversensitive, and we will. It's as you said. We don't make a favor for our young generation for the future. And I think but as I think too, it's a little bit like it's in history. It always happens. It's like times are going up and down, and it's this. There's this saying: good times create weak men, and hard times create strong men. And so probably that's now maybe then in the future we will have a little bit stronger men and women again.
And that's all we can really hope for, is that the pendulum will swing back. And
yes.
that some of the more extreme ideas of today that may not be serving us so well we'll find our way back to. And it goes back to our conversation earlier about being a moderate. It doesn't mean I'm just arbitrarily positioning myself in the middle. It means I'm moderating my own thought, speech, and action in a way that recognizes both the realities in which we live and is aspirational, is seeking to make things better.
Yes. So thank you very much. It was a great pleasure talking to you, and it's a great discussion. And I'm sure my listeners are going to enjoy this talk and enjoying getting to know you. And I say it again, if people want to reach out, learn more about you, they should go on www.theethicsninja.com.
Right? Just Ethics Ninja.
Ethicsninja.com. www.ethicsninja.com. So they can reach out to you. And soon your book will be out, The Spiral of Time, and there also I hope people will order it. And I wish you great success, and I hope in everything you do. And I hope we'll meet again, and maybe in Switzerland, and maybe online again. And thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I hope I didn't promise too much. I truly loved it. So please let me know what you think. Visit my website at www.muellermatthias.ch and leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel of the Stoic Pirate. Like the video and share it if you really enjoyed our discussion today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you will come back on board of the ship of the Stoic Pirate as we continue our quest for the treasure of the good life. Until then, be bold, be courageous, be kind, and be a critical thinker. Be a pirate, or as Rabbi Goldson would say, be a ninja. Take care, all the best, and see you soon.
Thank you for listening to the podcast of the Stoic Pirate. Come back again to our quest for the treasure of the good life.